Today we're starting something new, something a little bit different, but something I know will really resonate with a lot of our clients. One of the big themes I see from time and time again is that people want to make the most of their time. That might be in retirement, it might be with family, or simply making sure the experiences they have are generally enjoyable. And travel plays a huge part in that. But the challenge now is that many of the places people think they should go often don't deliver the experience they expect. They're overcrowded, commercial, and sometimes feel more like a checklist than a real break. So I wanted to bring someone in who really understands travel at a deeper level. William Cook is a travel writer for the Telegraph, where he specialises in continental Europe, particularly around Central Europe and the Baltic states. He's also written for The Independent and The Spectator and has won multiple awards for his work, including the Johann Strauss Medal for his reporting from Vienna. What I particularly like about William's writing is that there's not just about where to go and his experiences, but why you should go there and what kind of experience you'll actually have when you arrive. So today we're going to explore some of the most underrated cities in Europe and hopefully give you a few ideas for your next trip. William, great to have you on. Now, we've been talking just before here about places, and you've given me some hints and tips already, so we're most definitely going to dive into that. But we've been talking a lot with clients about travel recently, and one of the things that keeps coming up, and something that me and my wife Paula have been talking about, is that we want better experiences and not just the usual crowded trips. And you've written a brilliant piece about underrated European cities, and I think it really hits a nerve. So I'd love for us to start there, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's great to be here. And I think, this is why I always love having conversations about travel because, I'm learning from other people ultimately. And I'm hopefully a kind of, I'm just a conduit really for everybody else's opinions. So I learn on the job just like you do. And hopefully between us, we'll come up with a few tips that will inform your clients to have some really great adventures over the next year or so.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, look, this is one of many. This is going to be one of many. But today we're going to kind of talk about don't go here, go there, or don't go there, go here. So
Yeah.
I just want are we are you seeing that we are traveling to the same places and having a worse experience of it, or are you seeing anything different out there?
Well, I mean, there is a phenomenon, I think, with capital cities, broadly speaking, that capital cities become
Right.
more and more like one another. They become more similar to each other. And that's just the process. You see it in London as well. Often it's the same chain stores, the same chain restaurants. And that's fair enough because, that's what the people living there want. They vote with their feet. And, quite a lot of people do want to eat in KFC and Five Guys and so forth. And, stay in the same Hilton hotels and, you know, go to the same kind of department stores. But don't be too surprised if then you turn up in Paris or Berlin and you find the same kind of stuff there. Not exactly the same, but there is a kind of economic, geopolitical phenomena whereby all these cities become more and more alike. And I
Yeah.
guess what I was trying to say
How
in
far
that,
would you have to go back, William? Sorry, how far would you have to go back to, before Five Guys, KFC, were introduced and these chains were in cities? Was there a time in your past, was it 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that you would have gone and it would have been, local establishments with local people or has that been, it's always been there?
well, I think it's a process. I mean, one example I had, I mean, actually, a lot of these European cities I go to, I probably go to too regularly to notice the changes. But actually, I went back to New York a while ago for the first time in about 10 years. And one thing I really,
Yeah.
really noticed, I mean, thing I've always loved in New York is going to these diners, these kind of hole in the
Yeah.
wall
Yeah.
places. Some are terrible, some are brilliant. They're all different. You
Yeah.
feel like you could shoot a film noir in any one of them. They're very
Yeah.
atmospheric.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I had real trouble finding one this time. And I mean, the places that replaced them were fine,
Wow.
but they were kind of bland, they were average, they were a lot more corporate. And this is a process. This is an economic process. We can't
Yeah.
fight it. But I guess what I was
Yeah.
trying to get at with this, don't go there, go here, is to say, look, obviously we all want to see Paris, we all want to see Berlin, we all want to see these great European cities. But if you've been there once or twice, and it's a bit of a slog. It's quite exhausting. Go around all these must see sites that you feel you must see, and suddenly it's more exhausting than spending a long weekend at home. Then there's probably somewhere
Yeah.
just down the road that is a lot more chilled out, a lot more mellow, smaller for a start, where you can probably get around the city centre on foot without working out cabs and metros, where there's still a
Yeah.
lot of great culture, and where probably there's going to be a lot more authentic local life. I mean, obviously, when we travel, we're kind of part of the problem because we're tourists. It's like sitting in a traffic jam complaining about
Yeah.
traffic. You're
Yeah.
you're 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 part of the process. But I would say that you can go to some second or third cities in these countries, which are often very nearby capitals, which have a lot more authentic life, where the tourism hasn't reached that kind of tipping point, where the
Sure.
main purpose of the city is still to kind of exist in its own right, rather than to, get into this sort of theme park kind of element that you, regrettably, you do get to a certain extent in places like Venice and Barcelona and things now. I mean, Barcelona's changed a lot as well. I first went there in 1990,
Yeah.
and that was a really kind of
Okay.
off-piste destination then. And it's still great. I'd still say to anyone, you've got to go to Barcelona. You've got to see it at least once or maybe twice even. But
Yeah.
if you want a relaxing break and actually more authentic local culture, there are two or three cities less than an hour away that I would kind of recommend more.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, I've got an interesting, I say an interesting story, a tip for Barcelona for those that go. My family will laugh when they hear this because I am one for the tour buses. I love sitting on a bus, going around and being told all about the architecture and the history and the stories from real people that live there. And we went on a cruise a couple of years ago, and we cruised into Barcelona. And I was adamant we had to do a bus tour because it would get us around all the places we wanted to see quite easily. I didn't realize how many traffic lights there are in Barcelona. We were just stuck in traffic. It was the worst thing we could have actually done because we were just stuck in traffic light after traffic light after traffic light. And the gentleman that started with us ended up leaving to go somewhere else, and we were just on this loop of this audio tour guide that by the time it stopped, it had already gone on to the next destination, and we were so behind that it was just pointless being on the bus. So anybody that's going to go to Barcelona following this, don't go on a bus tour. Do it yourself and get around. I mean, I don't know if you've got any experience of going around Barcelona or any other options of travel, because
Yeah,
it's
no, well,
quite
absolutely.
widespread, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we were just talking before about Sitges, which is this amazing
Yeah.
seaside resort, half an hour away from Barcelona, just down the coast. And I think, I always describe it, it is to Barcelona what Brighton is to London. I mean, that gives you a good sort of shorthand to it, So it's a seaside town, but it's still got quite a buzzy sort of cultural vibe. A lot of the tourists there, most of the tourists, in fact, seem to be Spaniards who live locally, maybe have a weekend place there, even go there from the
Lovely.
day for Barcelona. And I would say, if you want to see the sights in Barcelona, but you want a seaside break as well, and you want to also relax and chill out a bit, and maybe get more of an authentic local vibe, I would say stay in
Yeah.
Sitges, spelled Sitges, and
I was going to ask how to spell it. Yeah.
yeah, and then do a couple of day trips to Barcelona. I guarantee you'll have a great time. So that's quite a good example of that don't go don't go there, go here example. It's not that I'm dismissing these other
Yeah.
places. I'd be heartbroken if I could never go to Barcelona again. But I think next time I go, I'll be staying in Sitges and doing a couple of day trips into town and spending the rest of the time, on the prom and on the beach.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And there are a
So
lot of
what
places like
what
that. I mean, I can think of several places around Europe where there are actually seaside resorts very near a big city where you can have a cultural city break and actually a seaside break pretty much in the same trip.
Oh, okay. Something for us to do on another
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm
webinar.
going off topic a
Yeah.
little bit, but let's
No, no, no. It's all good. No, no, no. There's no topic. It's just really, really insightful. Really insightful.
yeah. Well, I think one
Because
of the
what I'm
other
hearing is
examples
that
in
it
the
feels different.
Yeah, well, one of the other examples in the piece I think we are talking about was Vienna and Bratislava. And I'm saying, don't go to Vienna, go to
Yes. Yeah.
Bratislava. Well, obviously go to Vienna, but what I mean to say is you can go to Bratislava too, or you can go to Bratislava instead, or you can stay in Bratislava and do a day trip to Vienna. These places are often so close. Bratislava is the capital of Slovakia, but
Yeah.
it's actually
So,
really
yeah.
near the border with Austria. And actually, it's about 40 minutes in a coach from Vienna Airport. You can travel from Vienna
Right.
to Bratislava in a couple of hours, I think, on a boat, which is very scenic, going along the Danube, or you can do it by train as
Okay.
well. And often
Yeah.
people don't realize that these things are right on their doorstep, that it's wonderful to see the
Yeah.
big museums and the big palaces and things in Vienna. But actually, if that becomes a bit tiring and overwhelming, there's a city that's a fraction of the size with a lot of the culture, a lot of a lot more local life, which is just down the road. And I think Vienna, Bratislava is a great example. And I think that you could actually do both places in the same trip.
Because they're quite close, do they blend well together, or is it is it a dramatic difference between the two places?
Well, I think the fascinating thing about it's a good question. The fascinating thing about Central Europe is all of these places have sort of been in different empires and different kingdoms and things at
Yeah.
different times. So it's a kind of blend, and all these places are like variations on a theme. I mean, Bratislava
Mm.
actually, till the First World War, it's called Pressburg. It was part of the Austrian Empire. So, the Austrians kind of
Right,
controlled
okay.
it. And
Yeah.
it then got independence after the First World War, then changed hands a lot of times since then in various ways. So what you see is a fascinating melange of Austrian, German, bit of Russian, bit of
Okay.
Hungarian, all these different people
Yeah.
have been there. So it's very diverse. Obviously it was communist as well. So you've got certain, you know, bits of
Yeah,
communist
is
sort
that
of
the UFO?
legacy.
Is that where the UFO,
You're
oh,
absolutely
Rachel,
right.
you
There's
you're
there's a
yeah,
weird thing called a UFO cafe. I mean, it's not. It just looks like a UFO. So it's got some of
right.
this futuristic sort of space age Soviet style stuff there as well. I mean, all of these
Okay.
former communist places, they're a bit of a mishmash, and you have to go into them with
Are they?
broad-minded
Yes. Yeah,
attitude,
yeah, yeah.
basically, because it's not going to be beautiful
Yeah.
all over. But if you want somewhere that's beautiful all over, you end up in Venice, and then you end up there with a million other people. So it's a trade-off, I think.
Yeah.
But one thing I've
Yeah.
noticed with our readers, which I'm sure your clients are kind of similar, they've kind of been to a lot of the beautiful places, and what they want now
Mm.
is experiences, something that's a bit more authentic. And if someone's got a few rough edges, but there's more local life there, then they'll take that. That's okay, and that's a good trade-off. And I'd say that's what you get with Bratislava. It's not uniformly
Yeah.
beautiful, but it's lively, it's compact, it's authentic, it's
Yeah.
interesting. And
Yeah.
if you want to see the spectacular sights, then Vienna's just down the road.
Sure, sure. And do you when you go to these places, William, do you I wrote, do you travel light? Because, thinking about getting off of a, airplane and then getting on a boat and thinking about, a big luggage, having to push that along with myself. Do you tend to just go with a rucksack on your back, or is it a small suitcase?
It's probably a bit neurotic of me, but I never book hold luggage on an airplane. I can't stand
Okay.
it. There's always the
No.
slight stress. I mean, it's only happened to me a couple of times. There's always the slight stress of your luggage getting lost, and that's a huge
Yeah,
pain,
yeah.
obviously. Obviously, airports have become airports are just getting bigger and bigger and busier, and the process is becoming longer and more stressful. Everyone knows that. And it seems to me the one
Yeah.
way you can cut out a lot of that hassle is just taking hand baggage. I
Right.
mean, as you
I
know,
do
there's
yeah.
yeah, and even the budget airlines actually, you can just pay a bit more for hand luggage. A bit of extra hand luggage is much, much better than booking stuff in the hold.
Yeah.
And you never know
Yeah.
how long it's going to take you to get your bag back at the other end, especially if you're going through big airports like Schiphol and things. I've waited ages in the past.
Sure.
So that is a really, really good way to minimize your trip. And actually, we complain about globalizations and chain stores everywhere. But one of the bonuses of that is there are very few places in the world where you can't turn up and think, oh no, I've forgotten X, Y, and Z. I need to go out to the
Yeah.
local
Yeah.
supermarket and buy one. I mean, there's places, you know, they're selling stuff in all these places, and it's pretty easy to buy stuff
Yeah,
when you're
yeah,
out
yeah,
there to
yeah.
get something.
Well,
So
it's the
I'd say,
liquids, isn't it? I think liquids is always a bit of a worry, taking liquids through airports.
yeah,
Actually you can get off, buy your shower gel, your shampoo the other side once you're there. But Paula and I, for the first time ever in our lives, we went to Madrid in January, excuse me, and we went with a backpack on our back. And it was
mm,
so
well,
liberating being able to walk through the airport and straight out the other side and away we go. It was really fun, really fun.
Well, especially on a short city break. I mean, people are going away for shorter breaks now because we're getting busier, we're taking more shorter trips. what you've
Yeah.
got to do is shrink that airport experience, because it's the worst bit of the trip. So, flying's no longer a
Yeah.
novelty. Airports aren't what they were. They're getting bigger, busier, and the process gets longer and longer. And if you're just going away for 3 or 4 nights, then you'll be traveling on 2 of those days. You've absolutely got to shrink that bit of the trip. I mean, I have been
Yeah.
going to various places in Europe by train more and more, and there are pros and cons to that. I'm a big fan, but the process has still
Yeah.
got some way to go. There are some destinations where I think it's a no-brainer, and there's no way you should be flying now. The taking the train's just more fun. But I
Yeah.
certainly think, yeah, backpacks. Also, I've forgotten the name of the brand, but my wife bought me this incredible backpack that's like a concertina. You put all your stuff in it,
Oh,
and
okay.
then you can shrink it with straps. I've taken it on
Yeah.
Ryanair. I've taken it on EasyJet. I've put it underneath my seat on planes. And
Wow. Okay.
this takes absolutely. I don't even need to put it in the bins over my head. This thing absolutely takes
Yeah.
everything. So
Oh,
yeah.
fantastic.
So I would say that would be my first tip: is always just take a backpack. Don't put stuff in the
Yeah.
hold. You want to shrink that airport experience. You want to get rid of all the stress and hassle. And like I say, wherever you turn up, there's going to be a kind of local supermarket, a local chemist, a local department store where, in the unlikely
Yeah.
event, you can buy pants and socks and toothpaste and anything else you
Yeah.
want.
I love that, William. I really love that. That's a really good tip. Excuse me. And I just wanted to go back to you using trains a little bit more, if that's okay. Because reading the article, I think you mentioned around going to Paris on the train, and I know that's something Paul and I were talking around. Maybe that being one of the cities that we go to next, because it's something we haven't been to together. But then again, reading the article, and this might raise some eyebrows, that you were suggesting maybe not Paris but Lyon. Now,
Yeah, Lyon's.
I don't think you're saying Paris isn't worth it anymore because it's got an abundance of things there. But I'd like to know about the journey that you would take from London, from the UK to Paris, but then also, what makes Lyon a better experience for a weekend?
Well, I'm a big fan of Eurostar. It's a bit easier for me because I live in London and I'm a tube ride
Yeah,
away from St Pancras. But even so, I would say, if you've not done it before, give it a go, because there are aspects of it that are just magical. I mean, I go to Paris on the train, it's 2.5 hours. I mean, and
wow,
obviously you're right from city centre to city centre. If you don't live in London, you can even
yeah,
combine going on the Eurostar with a bit of a London mini break, because you could be staying in a,
yeah,
not necessarily a luxury hotel. I think it's a Premier Inn that's 100 yards away from
yeah,
St
yeah,
Pancras International. So you can have a bit of
yeah,
a mini break in London. It's all about a slightly different attitude of slower travel. But in terms of the actual trip, I mean, London to Paris, 2.5 hours. And then
mm,
obviously you're landing in Gare du Nord, where you're walking distance from a whole bunch of hotels. I'd recommend a
right,
great hotel that's right opposite Gare du Nord station for 25
yeah,
hours. And this is a part of a German chain. When I say a chain, there's maybe a dozen of them, something like that. It's not a
okay,
huge chain. 25 hours. And this is a great kind of upbeat, boutique, trendy,
yeah,
comfy, stylish hotel that is literally opposite the Gare du Nord terminal. So you get on the train
wow,
in
okay,
London, 2.5 hours direct, walk out of Gare du Nord, 25 hours hotel is right in front of you, and you literally just walk across the street to reception. So I'd really recommend that.
wow,
Another thing I'd say
yeah,
though, with onward travel from
yeah,
Paris, and onward
yeah,
train travel is surprisingly easy. And one thing that a lot of people don't seem to know about in Britain, why would they, is Gare de l'Est station, which is another Paris big train station that handles a lot of the stuff, as the name suggests, going east.
right,
That is about a 10-minute walk from Gare du Nord station. So if you're arriving with your
wow,
backpack and you haven't got loads of
yeah,
luggage, you can literally walk out the station, turn left, put it into Google. I wouldn't do it at midnight, but doing it during the day, it's no
yeah,
different from walking around central London. And you can walk to Gare
sure,
de l'Est station in 10 minutes. Because I know a lot of the time people arrive, they've got lots of bags, they don't want to go on the metro, it's all a bit hectic. Where do I buy a
yeah,
ticket? All that kind of thing. but actually
Yeah, yeah,
Garda station. So you start to see how these things link up. I mean, the thing I'd say with train travel
yeah,
in Europe, it's not perfect, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And I would say that's not the
yeah,
case with plane travel. With plane travel, you reach a kind of ceiling where it doesn't matter how savvy you are, all the kind of disadvantages kind of built in. Whereas actually, when you're
yeah.
traveling by train, you get to know, oh, there's this great brasserie across the road from the station, and who cares if it's an
Sure.
hour till my train? I can just nip in there. The experience becomes better and better. Whereas I feel that my experience with planes has kind of plateaued. It's never going to get any better. I kind of I've
Yeah,
learned a few
yeah,
tricks, but that's as good as it gets. Whereas actually,
yeah,
because train stations and trains are kind of embedded in the countries they're going through, your experience
yeah,
gets better and better. I mean, another thing I'd say on
yeah.
the Eurostar side of things, London to Amsterdam, 4 hours. Now, I know that sounds like a big chunk of time, 4 hours, but that is direct.
Mm.
You sit in an armchair, pay for, there's three classes on Eurostar: standard, um, standard
Oh,
premier, I
okay.
think it's called, and then there's business
Yeah,
class. Now, the business premier is quite a lot more expensive, but standard premier is
yeah.
hardly any different. You get a great comfy seat, you get a little meal on the train, and 4 hours from London to Amsterdam, that is a relaxing part of the trip.
Y
And then again, you get off in Amsterdam, you're in the middle of the city,
You're
and it's a
there.
hassle-free experience. And I think it's
Yeah,
interesting,
wow.
if you fly to Amsterdam, you're in the air for less than an hour, but you add on all those other
Mhm.
bits at either end,
Yeah,
getting to the airport,
yeah,
checking in, getting through security, getting to your gate, and
yeah.
then the whole
Passport control now.
passport control, the whole thing again at the other end. I would say, I mean, I
Mm.
haven't added it up precisely, but I would say it's going to take you at least 4 hours. And I would much rather having that 1 4 hour stint on the train, not broken up.
Yeah,
Last thing I'd say about
yeah,
Eurostar, because I know we've talked about it a lot, they'll think I'm working
yeah.
for them, is
Yeah.
London to Brussels. Now, I love Brussels. I think it's a really underrated destination.
Do you? Yeah?
Uh, but, you can talk about that another time. But the other thing in
Yeah.
terms of Eurostar, it is the hub for the rest of Europe in terms of trains. If you get yourself to Brussels on the train, Brussels South, which is where the Eurostar terminates, you can get
Yeah.
trains to so many different places. I travel to Germany
Oh, okay.
via Brussels on the Eurostar quite frequently because you can pick up a German train there. You can pick up trains going all over from Brussels station, from
Yeah.
the same station. You don't need to transfer to a different station. It's Brussels South or Brussels Zuid, Brussels Midi, and the various different languages. But basically, from that Eurostar station, you can then travel on to a whole bunch of places in different countries. So I would say look
Oh,
at
okay.
Brussels not just as a destination, but it's a hub. Once you're there,
But
you're on bound to all sorts of other places. So yeah, the train travel thing, it's a work in progress,
yeah.
but it's exciting, and I think people are going to be doing it more and more.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you for that insight. That's really helpful. Um, cool. Where do we go now? Because there's so many things that we could touch on in your recent article. What one of them was we've already touched on Barcelona, haven't we? But I've been to Valencia, and we had a really really good time there and in and around the local area. But why do you suggest Valencia? Is it about avoiding the crowds of Barcelona, or is there something more that can offer?
Well, the thing I like about Barcelona, it kind of sorry, about Valencia, is it reminds me of Barcelona in the
Mm.
'90s. I mean, that's kind of where
Okay. Yeah.
Barcelona was in the '90s, I think. And as you know, it's got a wonderful combination of a historical centre and a beach
Yeah.
resort just
Yeah.
down the road. And it's got this sweet
Yeah.
spot whereby, you do want some tourist infrastructure. I mean, we are tourists, we're sightseers, let's not kid ourselves. We're not
Yeah.
Bear Grylls, we're going somewhere where we want there to be some stuff laid on for us. But I guess the key thing
Yeah.
is the stuff that's laid on for us isn't what's most of what's going on in a city. It's a kind of small part of it. And that's kind of what you want. I think you sort of want the tourists to be in a significant minority rather than a significant majority, because
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
let's face it, you can
Well,
turn
that's where
up
you
in a
go there,
place
isn't it? You know, that's where you go. You go to experience a local cuisine, the local people. You want to understand how they're living rather than seeing people like yourself eating fish and chips from Valencia type of thing. What is
well,
it that
actually, yeah, and also this is where places with rough edges
yeah,
are kind of often better to explore because what you don't want to do, I think, is to go to a place where tourism is the major industry of the place. Because inevitably, with the best will in the world, all sorts of tacky stuff is going to creep in, and you're going to end up having a kind of dispiriting experience. You know, if there's a bunch of factories on the edge of town, and you think,
mm,
oh gosh, what an eyesore. Well, that's kind of good because if most of the kind of commerce of the place is to do with the factories, then you're going to be eating
yeah,
in, authentic restaurants that are well
yeah,
priced and stuff like that because they're
yeah,
catering for the locals. So I would say, don't be seduced by somewhere that's uniformly beautiful. Everywhere's got pretty bits of town. And actually I would trade a sort of place where it's a bit more gritty, a bit more sort of, you know, a bit more grunge and grime,
mhm.
because ultimately the quality of the experience can often be better than being in somewhere where everywhere is like Instagram and inevitably with all the kind of
Yeah, yeah,
stuff that comes
yeah.
with
That's
it.
yeah. We in Madrid we went to a villa and there was a queue of young girls, and we're like, us being British, you start queuing up with them, and you go, well, hang on, why are we queuing up? Because we're just walking around a garden, and then we found out later on that they were all queuing up for an idyllic photo by a gate that looked over Lake Como.
Oh
And
yeah.
so they were all taking, all have brushes in their hair and, doing this. And they all looked exactly the same pose, exactly the same, places where they were placing their feet and looking back over their shoulders to have exactly the same Instagram moment. So it's quite funny. I'm not of that era.
But this is
Thankfully,
where
I
I
think.
would I
But
would really recommend Central and Eastern Europe because for various
yeah,
historical
yeah,
reasons, Central Europe, the German-speaking countries, Germany, Austria, the Benelux as well, Belgium, Netherlands
right.
outside Amsterdam. These places, for various
Yeah,
reasons, are not so fashionable or haven't been so fashionable historically. And then when you get
yeah,
into the more eastern parts of Europe, obviously these communist places, you couldn't go there during the Cold War. It was very difficult to go there anyway, and so most people
oh
didn't.
yeah, sure, yeah. I hadn't even
And
thought of that actually. Yeah,
yeah, and then after the Cold
yeah,
War, after the war came down, these places were fascinating, but they were a bit of a challenge. But what I would say now is, I mean,
mm,
people have not been to ex-communist, especially the bigger cities, in places like Poland. Budapest is on the map these days, certainly, but there's a lot of places in Poland where you would be amazed by how kind of up to date the infrastructure is. And
yeah,
if you want to stay in a sort of smart hotel, go to a smart restaurant, travel around on trams
sure,
and metros, I mean, you can have the same infrastructure experience in a
yeah,
lot of these Eastern European cities now that you do in the West. And actually, often the infrastructure is actually newer and more modern. So, I mean,
right.
I would say if you don't want to be queuing up for Instagrams, then the places to
Mm,
look at more closely are certainly Central and Eastern Europe, because the German-speaking countries were not so fashionable. The Benelux was not so fashionable, by which I mean
sure.
Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. And actually these Eastern European countries are just coming on in leaps and bounds.
Yeah. How interesting. And I mean, listening to you just talk passionately about the places that aren't maybe the main city capitals. It feels. I mean, I read your articles as well. It feels like there's a real message here, and I've got to admit, being honest here, that by reading your your content over the last couple of months, and then by talking to you now, that I think I need to start thinking differently about how I travel, how we travel as a couple, as a family, and give it a little bit more deeper thought, I suppose, for the reasons that we've just articulated. In terms of crowds, experiencing. Um, the culture of the local place you're visiting. So for me, it's really it's fan. I love this. I love this because there's some places. I live in Martock in Somerset. Okay,
Mm.
people are going to travel. I always think when we fly into Bristol and we've got international people coming into Bristol, I think. We've I'm just going back to Madrid. We flew into Madrid, very, very easy airport to train, hotel, okay? Very easy. And I just look at some people that are traveling into Bristol thinking, geez, you've got a long way to go from the airport, a long way to go from the airport to wherever you're going, even into Bristol City, or if you're going to go into London, they've got another couple of hours journey if they want to get into London by train or by bus. So, we're quite fortunate when we've gone to places before where it's quite easy when you get off the other end. And so, yeah, it's I feel sorry for people visiting England because we were quite far away from everybody, and no one would come to Martock. No one would come down to our little village, and that's where when Paul and I like to go off and went to Venice. We stayed outside of Venice and ended up actually going there for one day and actually hiring a car and travelling around all the little villages and the harbours and bits and pieces like that, just to experience their way of life, really. And I'd like to ask kind of what for you does a really good travel experience feel like today? And I want to maybe you compare it to 10 to 15 years ago, but first of all, I'd love to understand what good looks like for you, I suppose, when you select a destination or when you're there. What is it that you're looking for?
Well, I think that's a very good question. And actually, it does refer, I think, quite closely back to this article we're talking about. Don't go there, go here.
Yeah,
Because I think a lot of these cities that I picked out, Lyon as opposed to Paris, um,
yeah, yeah,
Trieste as opposed to Venice, Bratislava as opposed to Vienna, Leipzig as opposed to Berlin. A lot of these places, I think
yeah.
one thing they've got in common is a walkable city centre. So, for instance, I mean,
Oh,
I love Berlin. I've probably been there more than any other city outside of Britain, but things are pretty spread out. You're on the S-Bahn or the U-Bahn quite a lot of the time getting across town, and I mean, that can be a challenge. Um, I think if you certainly if you're going somewhere for the first time, I think a walkable city centre is just great.
yeah,
And I think I think I covered 9 cities in this article, and I think one thing they've all got in common is you can walk around the city centre, and pretty much everything you want to
brilliant.
see is walkable. And the lovely thing about walking, obviously, it's good for you. It's nice. You get out and about, but you see all sorts of other stuff along the way. You may be heading for this museum or this castle or this villa or something, but actually along the way you pass somewhere that's just as good, and
Yeah,
you end up stopping off there. You find somewhere for lunch just by chance, whatever. Whereas actually, if you're on in a cab or if you're even in public transport, you're slightly insulated from all that. So I'd say walkable is a key thing. And I've often thought, actually, in terms of the 500,000 population city, this seems to me to be a real sweet spot. And actually, for
oh
living in,
really, does it? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because it struck me that a lot of the cities that I really like in Europe have got 500,000 people around that.
Well, I
Because
never.
I think if you've got half a
Yeah,
million
yeah,
people, you've got an international airport, you've got an opera house, you've got some sort of big local government, you've got a concert hall, you've got a big
sure.
theatre, you've got cinemas, all the big chain
Yeah,
hotels, your Hiltons and everything, all those people are there. You've basically got most of the infrastructure of a big capital city. And yeah, everything's walkable.
without them.
You know, everything's compact. You probably find that the place isn't overrun tourist wise because, it's a bit smaller and it's not one of these huge main hubs. But there's countless examples
Yeah,
like that. For instance, Dusseldorf in and Dresden in Germany, east and west, 2 really thriving cities that are both 500,000 people, where you have a great experience if you go there. Um, and there's a bunch of other cities that are very similar, Ghent and Antwerp, for instance, in Belgium, I think are
yeah,
much more attractive than Brussels on the one hand, which is a very big city, or on the other hand, Bruges,
yeah,
which is beautiful but has obviously become a bit of a theme park. So that
yeah.
500,000
Do you
city
find
is,
that? Have you found that? Have you found that it's changed a little bit, that it's become a
yeah,
theme
well, I
park,
mean,
so
it's
to
I
speak?
mean, again,
Yeah.
you've got to see it. You've got to go to Bruges. It's wonderful. It's unbelievable. But
Yeah,
go
yeah,
there on a rainy day in February, and possibly go there on a day trip from Antwerp or Ghent or whatever. I mean, I'm not dismissing any
Yeah.
of these places, and there are still places on my itinerary that I haven't been, which I'm sure are very touristy, and I still need to see. Never been to Rome, for
Yeah.
instance, and I can't wait to go. And I don't really care
Oh,
if it's
haven't you?
full of
Okay.
tourists.
Yeah.
I've got to
Yeah.
see all the stuff there. But I would say look at second or third cities and places. And actually, if it's
Yeah.
a bit of a stretch,
Yeah.
most of these places, they've got chain hotels you've stayed in before. Obviously, you don't wanna kinda go completely off piste and be having, some experience where you don't have a clue what's gonna go on. But if you like staying in
No, no.
Kempinski's, these places have got a Kempinski. If you like staying in Hilton's, these places have got a Hilton. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't need to go completely overboard in these places.
Sure.
You can still have a kind of secure infrastructure, go back to a smart hotel at night, and go off during the day and, really, really discover a different kind of
Yeah.
authentic place.
That's, I've written down walkable. I love that. I hadn't even thought of that as a good tip, but everything being walkable is really, really good.
I think
Really
it's a
good.
good
When I
challenge
think of the
also. I
places.
mean, I was a bit down on Paris. I mean, and Paris is remarkable, obviously. The best time I had in Paris, and my wife and I didn't intend to do this, we stayed in a hotel, we booked into a hotel in Montparnasse. We were only there for a weekend, and we ended up not getting the metro at all. I think we walked from Gare
Okay.
du Nord, we got the Eurostar, we walked from Gare du Nord down to Montparnasse. It was a bit of a hike, but we managed it.
Yeah.
Um, and then actually, we kept meaning to get a metro off to somewhere else around town, but we ended up spending the whole of um, our trip just in that local neighborhood, and we really got to know Montparnasse. And
Did
each
you? Yeah.
arrondissement in Paris has its own identity. A bit like in London, it's a series of like little areas. And actually, Berlin's the same. And I would say, if you are in one of these big cities, obviously you want to see the standout sites. Who doesn't want to see the Brandenburg Gate or the
Yeah. Yeah.
Eiffel Tower or whatever? But I would say also try and see if you can have your sort of city break in one part of the city. I think that's often quite a rich experience. Then you nose
That's quite
around,
fun. Yeah.
you find the little things. Can we actually go to Paris and not take the metro? I mean, you know,
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
be too rigid about it, but you might find that there's some experiences you have that you wouldn't have had otherwise, especially if you
Yeah,
find a
without a doubt, a
hotel
side
that's
street here, a
in a
side
fun
street
part
there,
of
an ice
town.
cream stall somewhere else. Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So but
We've
I
been
mean,
to
I
I've
think
been to Rome a couple of times. Oh, sorry, go on, William. Sorry, I interrupted.
no,
Go on.
go on, tell me about Rome.
Oh no, only that it's walkable, but it's a lot it's a lot of walking. We Paul and I have been there on our own and had a phenomenal time. We actually, I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, but we were told again by a customer, and that's something that you and I were talking about before I hit record. Is I'm very fortunate spending time with people. I get lots of hints and tips, and hopefully people that are going to be watching this will be getting many today, and they will do in the future, and that they can use themselves. But I was recommended to go on the Scavy tour,
Oh
where
yeah,
you have to book beforehand, and it's quite regimented, old fashioned. When we did it, you had to email a particular office. We got there 5 minutes early, and we were told to go away. Because you had to be there dead on time, not early, not late, and we were hanging around. But that was a really insightful tour underneath the basilica. That was fantastic. But we've done it with the boys as well, so they came with us, and we walked the entire. We did the Spanish Steps. We went to the Colosseum. We did the Forum. We went everywhere that you would need to go and walked it within a day. But I wouldn't suggest doing it all in a day, William. But yeah, the good news is that it's most definitely walkable, and loads of history there. It's a fantastic city, and I can make a recommendation for off the beaten path restaurant as well. That we like to venture off and look for places that are off the beaten path. We're not a Five Guys, although you might think that I'm a Five Guys or a KFC guy by the size of me. But we do like eating somewhere local, and it was a Google Maps really helped actually in trying to find places that are recommended to eat and to see. So yeah, Rome, you'll have a lot of fun there when you get there. That's for sure.
well, I think you hit on a really interesting point actually with Google Maps and things like that. We shouldn't be too down on the new technology. I mean, and you know, as a I'm a travel writer, but I'm also a tourist. I'm also a sightseer. I'm also somebody who
Yeah,
goes on holiday. And all that I am providing really, I think, is just starters for people, just something to kind of get
Yeah.
somebody started. And then, of course, they make their own discoveries. They come back, they have a completely different experience from me,
Yeah.
and they come back with a load of tips that I want to hear from them. But also, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact there's a lot of negativity about over tourism and globalization and stuff like that. We live in a golden age of European travel. I mean, I didn't go abroad till I
I
was
like that.
18,
Yeah.
and a lot of other
Yes. Yeah.
people,
Me
I'm
too.
sure, are the same. It's so expensive to go abroad. Um, it was very
Yeah.
difficult in lots of ways. The practicalities were quite daunting. Um,
Mm.
and now everyone's got a smartphone in their pocket. Okay, that can go one or two ways. It can lead you to the most Instagrammable places where you're standing in a huge queue to take a selfie, or it can take you off the beaten track and give you a lot of very
Mm.
authentic experiences. Eastern Europe's
Yeah.
opened up. It's great to speak some of the local language, but you'll never get into any practical difficulties because so many people speak English and so much stuff is in English. So that's all fine. So,
That's
I
good to
would
hear.
say
Yeah.
the continent, which is my sort of area of expertise, I guess, I would say that
Yeah.
that is wide open like it's never been before. And, you don't need to stick to, you know, half a dozen different familiar cities. There are,
Mm.
any of the other big cities are gonna, or even the medium-sized cities are gonna give you a very special experience. And you may find somewhere that's particularly your place in a way that the big mega cities never will be, really.
Yeah, explore and be brave, isn't it? Explore and
Mm.
be brave. That's what I kind of try and remind myself when we're looking at places to go.
Yeah.
If someone was listening to this and thinking about, I know we've started to whet their appetite and they're inspired for a trip this year. What and they were going to use your article as a bit of a checklist, as a, oh, okay, let's not go there, let's go here. What if that checklist was had to be put in any priority order? What would be the first pick? What would be your first pick?
Well, good question in terms of first picks. I mean, I would say, yeah, let me see if I can think of a
Yeah.
few of them. Well, the Berlin-Leipzig thing is very interesting. If you have been to Berlin a couple of times, I think you'd love Leipzig. I mean, again,
Right. Yeah.
I was saying that Valencia's kind of like Barcelona was in the 90s. I think Leipzig's like Berlin was in the 90s. It's on
Oh,
the up,
okay.
it's quite
Yeah.
groovy, quite grungy.
Yeah.
That's a very exciting place, I think. Another one that I would put very near the top of the list is Venice and Trieste. I mean, obviously, Venice is wonderful. It's a beautiful
Okay.
place. Everyone's got to see it.
Yeah.
But Trieste is also
Yeah.
on the Adriatic, not far away at all.
Mm.
It's a few hours on the train.
Mm.
You can fly there direct from UK.
Oh, well, you can
And
fly there direct. Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Trieste is a fascinating city. It's part of the Austrian Habsburg Empire for a long time. It's got a lot of Austrian influence. It's got a lot of people have been passing through in the past. It's got a very rich culture. Is on the
Okay.
edge of the. It's got a bit of a sort of film noir feel because it was right on
Yeah.
the edge of the Iron Curtain, right next to Slovenia. Now it's wide
Right.
open again. Trieste is a really great place. And actually, you could combine it with Venice. The two places aren't too far apart. So maybe you go to Venice and you do all the stuff you need to do, and then you go and chill out in Trieste in place that's a bit more kind of languid and not so sort of overrun. So that is a place
Yeah.
I like a lot. We talked about Valencia versus Barcelona before. I think
Yeah.
that's a good one. Amsterdam and Delft, that's another one that springs to mind. Amsterdam is full of
Yeah.
great things. But again, the other thing, I mean, I'd say the two things that are big surprises for people who don't know Belgium and don't know the Netherlands. I mean, they're both quite, relatively small countries, and
Yeah.
everybody gravitates to Brussels or you know,
That's right.
Amsterdam for business in particular. But actually, both those countries have fantastic rail infrastructure. And if you are in the
Uh,
central station in Brussels or for Belgium or Amsterdam for the Netherlands, you can get to just about anywhere in an hour or so, on a train, on a direct
Wonderful.
train that probably cost you €10, if that. These,
Yeah,
if
cheaper.
don't just think Brussels for Belgium, don't just think Amsterdam for the Netherlands. If you are in the central station of either of those places, you can get to pretty much
Yeah,
anywhere else in the country. And
uh,
actually, I mean, I picked Delft for my article, but Amsterdam
you
is
did, yeah.
so close to so many beautiful Dutch cities, which actually have a lot of the great stuff that is in Amsterdam, but in a place that's half the size with half as many tourists. I mean, not just Delft, but Haarlem, Utrecht, Leiden, Maastricht. These are all beautiful
Oh,
Dutch cities,
yeah.
and you couldn't go wrong in any of them, really. I mean, as I say, I mean, Delft,
You've
Utrecht,
just you've just
Haarlem.
literally you've literally just rolled those places off your tongue. How did you come across them, William? Are you quite particular in your planning and going, I'm going to go here, there, or is it saying you've just got a rucksack on, you've gone exploring? I mean,
Well,
I know it's part of your role, but
I mean, no, it's an interesting point. How do you pick places? I mean, actually, I write quite a bit about art, and I think,
yeah,
art has been a very good way of getting me into places that I've then discovered through the art. So, for instance, I think I
okay,
um, first went to Leiden, first went to Haarlem, first went to Delft, and first went to Utrecht. All those four places I went to write about big art exhibitions. Some of them were ones that were coming to
okay,
Britain, or I was writing about those
yeah,
artists there and that place. So I had a kind of reason for going. And then
okay,
because I went to those places to write about the art, I thought, hang on, there's a travel story here too. These places are fantastic. And never mind the
yeah,
travel story, I'm
yeah,
just going to come back here on my holidays as well. And
yeah,
actually, in a
yeah,
funny sort of way, I would say it's a similar thing to football fans. Football fans, they go to a particular city in Europe because they're going to see a match there, and some
yeah,
of them go straight
yeah,
in, straight out, and that's logistics. Sometimes you have to do it that way. But actually, a lot of people kind
mm,
of hang around and, get to know a place and say, actually, I just went here for the football match, but it was great. And I mean, and I think
yeah,
you've touched on something, which is the sort of tyranny of choice. We can be a bit paralyzed now, where we think, where should we go on
yeah.
holiday? Where should we go for the city break? There's so many choices. And I would say
There is so many
actually
choices.
have an
Yeah,
objective. If you love Rembrandt,
yeah,
go to Leiden. If you love Vermeer, go to Delft. If you love
yeah,
Frans Hals, these are all Dutch artists, go to Haarlem.
yeah,
And then you've got a reason for
yeah,
going, and then you will check out a bunch of stuff
yeah,
along the way. So
yeah,
that's what
yeah.
takes me
I
there,
love
I
that.
think, is those kind of objectives and I would say sort of follow your enthusiasms. Um, if you just love steam trains, then the best way to discover Germany is just go to all the destinations
Mm.
where they still have narrow gauge steam trains. You'll have a wonderful time checking out
Yeah,
all these narrow gauge steam railways with antique locomotives on. But actually, those steam trains will take you to some of the best places in Germany because they're
places.
off the beaten track
Yeah,
and they're quaint and they're historic and they're in beautiful countryside. In
yeah.
places where these steam trains have survived. So, that's another thing. I would
That's
say
really interesting.
don't
Yeah,
don't don't generalize. Be specific. If you love Art Nouveau architecture, you know, go and do the Art Nouveau tour of Brussels, and you will actually see another side of Brussels. And to cultivate some
yeah, yeah,
specific interest. Everybody's got stuff they're fascinated by, and I'm sure some of your clients who are golfers have got the same thing. They go somewhere to play golf, and then they find there's
yeah.
some beautiful historic town down the road.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Portugal, a couple of clients go to, and also Spain as well. Yeah, different parts of Spain, most definitely. Yeah, and they always talk about the little tavernas that they go to, and they've got their own little clubs. Their own. They've got their own little places that they go to now, and it's become a bit of the norm, which is just lovely. Good, 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 good. Well, I've
I
taken a
mean,
lot out of today. A lot out of today. I've made a list of hints and tips. Most definitely for me. Um, Paula's going to get a list of places we need to we need to kind of start thinking about. And actually, for me, what's really resonated, like I've already said, is to think a little bit harder around where I talk about. I see, we're 45 and a relatively, I say young family. The boys are all 18, 22, and 28 now. Um, we kind of split our year down to what's a holiday, so a beach or a pool holiday, and then the travel holiday, so where we're going to go and explore, Dublin, Edinburgh, Madrid, Milan,
Mm.
those kind of places. But we've got a map, and I'm sure other people have had this, where they've got a map with pins, and you end up going, oh, I've been there, so I won't go there again. I'll go to another capital city, or I'll go to another country. And actually, what I'm going to probably start doing from now on is actually try and move a pin slightly east, or maybe a little bit away from that original pin, the capital, so we explore some other cultures. And I'm hugely into art. I did A-level art at school, and and that's why I liked Rome so much, and also Florence, because I did a big
Mm.
project on Michelangelo. But again, there's make sure we're doing things well. And we actually, I can't remember where we wanted to go, but we didn't get an opportunity. Going back to our conversation before, where when we've been looking at going to cities and experiencing them, you end up trying to pre-book places so you're not in queues, and then that stops you sadly from exploring. And one of the things I didn't manage to do was go and see The Last Supper by Leonardo,
Mm.
because we were trying to do too many things in a particular day, and it closed on one of the days we were there. So yeah, planning is really important, but walkable, great, got that. Train, not really ever thought of that, but what, we 2 hours, 2.5 hours away from London, from probably St Pancras, if we went
Yeah.
from
Well, Paris is 2.5 hours,
from
Brussels is 2 hours, and Amsterdam's 4. And what I would say
yeah,
also, picking up on your point about the art, I would say most of my travel experiences that have been disappointing have been when I've been too general. And most of the better ones is when I've been more specific. And,
right,
I would say pursue your specific interest. And then if you
yeah,
go to somewhere, it sounds a bit counterintuitive. Say, I'm going to go to this European city because they've got this, there's this artist I've always loved, and his house is there and they've turned it into a museum. Well, that's a good reason to go,
mm,
because you will find other stuff around it. It just won't just be in a sea of
yeah,
nothing. And you will then have spontaneous experiences around this one specific experience. I mean, mad example,
yeah.
in Hamburg, there's a place called Miniature Wonderland. It's the biggest model railway in the world, right? It
Oh,
is
okay,
in,
yeah,
and it's, and you think, well, why would I go to Hamburg to see a model railway? Well, a lot of people are model railway enthusiasts. You want to see the biggest one in the world. When you get there, it's in a huge, big warehouse that is in the warehouse district of Hamburg, which is a very interesting part of town. And there's various different bars around. And then you come out of the
right.
place, and there's ferry boats that will take you around the docks and take you in the canals and take
Oh,
you off
really?
into the
Okay,
lake
yeah,
and stuff. You've gone there to see this model railway,
sure,
massive model
yeah,
railway, and then actually the experience opens out. So I think find a
yeah,
specific
yeah,
thing that you love in one of these places, go there, and then
yeah.
your other experiences, authentic
Well,
experiences, will sort of follow on from it. And as you said as
that's
well,
brilliant,
if you
brilliant.
if you know, it's a big stretch to go to a country you've never been to before. And this is my beef with travel writing a little bit, is when people say,
Is it?
"Oh, go to Georgia, it's amazing." You think, "Well, okay, that's quite a big stretch. I've only got one holiday this year,
Y-
and but what
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
say is find countries you know. If you've been to Paris, then going to
Mm.
Lyon is not gonna be a big stretch for you. You're gonna be in your comfort zone. It's gonna be
Yeah,
great,
yeah,
If you've been to Berlin,
yeah, I
go
hear
to
that.
Leipzig. If you've been to, um, uh, Brussels or Bruges, go to Ghent or Antwerp. If you pick another place in that country, because I know what it's like,
Mm.
it feels like a risk to go somewhere you've never been to before. But if you go to a different location in a country you've been to before, that's a win-win, isn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt, and there's normally going to be a golden nugget there as well that you come across, and it surprised you because maybe your expectations are a little bit lower than what they would be if you pre-planned the entire trip. So no, that's
Yeah,
brilliant,
absolutely.
brilliant, William, and I know you've given me food for thought, and this is dangerous for us, without a doubt. However, how many episodes we get a chance to do. I know Germany's one that I most definitely would love to cover off with you and use your mind around, because it's something that I've never visited Germany before until last year, and we visited it twice now, two different cities, and yeah, we're blown away with it. So I know you've given me lots of food for thought and things I want to do, and I know I'm sure there's people that are going to be listening to this that they've got a few new places to look at as well. So thank you so much. But look, you write brilliantly, okay, and about these places that you visit, and a couple of other things I like is, and I have gone down the rabbit hole where I'm reading an article and you suggest a place to eat or a hotel to stay, and I click on the link, and then so it really helps. It's quite easy to make it happen. These things that you suggest, because your articles provide links to other places. But where can people follow more of your work?
Well,
If you mind just letting us know, if people have listened to this and thought, "Oh, I'm interested in reading a little bit more about this," or
yeah, no,
where
well,
can people find
absolutely.
you?
Well, the Telegraph site is brilliant in terms of not just having current news, but it's like a whole library. It's a whole archive,
Yeah,
and if you just search William Cook and Telegraph, on Google or whatever, your my dedicated author page will come up, and that's basically like a
yeah,
list of all the articles I've done, and you can click on those
brilliant.
going all the
Okay,
way back. Articles are often updated. Obviously,
yeah,
as you were saying, there's hyperlinks there that you're clicking through to websites which are also updated.
yeah,
So these articles are just starting points. I wouldn't pretend that
yeah,
what I've written about Trieste is the last word about Trieste. But what I mean to say, it will give you enough information, one of these pieces, to get started, to find out who flies there and where from, what the train links are like,
yes,
recommended hotel normally with a hyperlink to their site, usually
mm,
restaurants, two or three of those, two or three museums and attractions. It will give you more than enough
yeah,
to plan your own trip. And as I say, just go on the Telegraph site, look for me by
mm,
name. And actually, the Telegraph site travel bit of the website is brilliant in that you can put in a destination. So never mind my stuff. You can just go on the Telegraph website and you can put in, either a country or a city or whatever
oh, okay, yeah,
into their dedicated search engine, and then you will get instantly a list of all the articles they've done about it.
wow,
So, I mean, if you put Berlin into it, you get a few articles by me, but you get a bunch of articles about by other people and stuff about every
yeah,
aspect of it. So, I
oh,
mean,
okay,
it's a
yeah,
really great resource. As I say, I mean, so go on the Telegraph website. If you want my articles, look for me by name, and you'll get a whole list of them
yeah,
all in one place. Or
great.
even better, I would say, look for a particular destination and you will get all the articles by everybody.
That's really good advice. That's really, really good advice. So I'd say last question. I'm always in danger of saying another question, and I follow up with another three. But so we're planning on doing this once a month, aren't we? Have you got anywhere in the diary between now and April? Are you off anywhere?
Yeah, well, I'm going to a few places. I'm going to be in Germany. I'm going to be in Slovakia, and I'm going to be in Denmark.
Okay,
So, Germany's a
great.
place I know pretty well. Slovakia, I've only been to a couple of times before. Um,
Yeah,
Denmark, I only know Copenhagen, so it's going to be a great adventure to get out and about that way.
sure.
Somebody once
Is
said,
there a theme to your trips, William? Is there a theme? Is there a theme?
oh,
Of why you're going there?
normally
Is it
there's a
art
kind of
related or?
there's normally a cultural or
Yeah,
historical kind of angle to it, I guess.
yeah,
And that kind of gives me a way in. Just as, we were saying, if you're a football fan or if you're a golfer, that would give you a way into a destination.
yeah,
And I would say going back to that, that's probably the best way to see the world. Go around the world with your golf
mm,
clubs or go around the world to tick off all the great football grounds, and you'll see a lot of other good stuff along the
yeah,
way. And if we do this again, hopefully we will next month. Very much
yeah,
looking forward to it. Then one thing
yeah,
I'd really love to touch on is beach destinations that are near cultural cities, because I know of six or eight of them. And people,
yeah.
it's always something my wife and I always have this thing. Do we go to a beach destination where we just sit around and take it easy? Or do we go to some cultural city where we have a fascinating time, but we come back more tired than when we went?
Yeah,
And these are
yeah,
places,
yeah,
these destinations I have in mind, are places where you really can do a bit of both. So, cultural
brilliant.
cities right by really great beach resorts. You really can have a few days on
Yeah,
the beach and you can have a few days in the city as well. And it's something that my wife and I have done several times, and
Right.
I'd love to share those tips next time. So tune in.
Oh, let's do that because that's right up Paul on my street. You know, bit of everything, a tick in every box to some extent, some relaxation. I chuckled because we've done that many a time. We've gone away and come back. More, we need another holiday. Come back to
Yeah.
work for a rest, I think is the saying, isn't it? No, that's great.
Well, this
William,
would be a
thank you
good way to
so
do
much.
both. So I'm really looking forward
Yeah,
to that
yeah.
in particular.
Yeah, brilliant. Look, thank you so much for your time. And like I said, I'm sure someone listening will really benefit from it and get inspired, hopefully. I'm going to stop the recording now, and then you and I, that if that's okay with you. Unless there's anything else that you think, oh, Pete, I wanted to touch on this.
No, I think you've got plenty to work with. Can be a curse to have too much.
Yeah,